The phrase self-defense is one often associated with the world of martial arts and a multitude of combat sports on display in rings, cages and on competition mats around the globe. But is there a discipline focused solely on real modern-day threats, one honed to be effective in situations without rules or a referee? Could you deal, for example, with an armed assailant, or keep a loved one safe from harm? Would you know when to walk away, or to recognise when violence has become the only option? Eyal Yanilov was the closest assistant to the founder of Krav Maga, a comprehensive system encompassing self-defense, combatant fighting, and third-party protection. Its practical techniques and tactics can be applied to a wide range of violent confrontations and are being taught by more than 1,500 active instructors globally. Mr. Yanilov recently came to the island and taught a seminar at the invitation of Jersey Krav Maga, but first he stopped by the studio for this Bailiwick Podcast episode. We spoke about everything from knife defense to mental training and why Krav Maga is something that everyone should learn. I'll start by just saying, thank you so much for coming in. A lot to get into in terms of the history, and you're obviously a part of that history with Krav Maga, but I want to start by asking how you would define it, especially to someone who's maybe never heard of it before.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Krav Maga is an integrated system of self-defense, combatant fighting, and third-party protection. The main thing is obviously to avoid, de-escalate, not to get into the trouble. But when you have no alternative, and usually the mothers and the teachers are saying violence is not the answer. And it's true until violence is the only answer. So we are trying to not to fight, not to be in the violent confrontation, but if there's no alternative, then we are very specialized in that. How to, let's say, win. And winning depends on the situation. But winning can be make a defense and run away because I'm faster than the aggressor. Winning may be killing a terrorist. Winning can be a push or punch, and the aggressor doesn't want to or cannot continue. That's the idea.
And in your view, what makes it so effective as a self-defense system?
Mm-hmm. So, first of all, it was developed in modern life. And it's based on natural responses. Natural response depends on the posture, on the angle of the attack. That's one thing. And the other thing is it is very logical, very easy to learn. It's integrated, so different things are connected. When you learn one thing, it can be applied against some other type of attacks. The training is physical, technical, tactical, and mental. And mental is the most important. We are preparing people how to deal with stress, how to solve new problems under stress. And the founder was really a genius in giving the best solution for a specific problem according to the human responses and the behaving of the aggressor. So everybody says that we are so effective.
And maybe people are familiar with Krav Maga, or they do a combat sport, yes, a martial art, for example. Yes. Do you think there's a distinction between training for a combat sport, mm-hmm, such as Muay Thai or boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, yes, versus a street fighting scenario, yes, a real, yes, world event?
Well, what is the goal? That's really the issue. And what are the rules? And what is the scheme and the surrounding? And what is the structure of the competition or the fight? And it's very different. Our goal is, as I said before, not to get into the confrontation. And if we are going to confrontation, we have to apply the rule, which are the law of the country. There's no sport laws in Krav Maga. Yes, we are not a sport. Maybe I'll give an example. Boxing used to be, old times, boxing was, something like this. You remember this type of pictures? And it was really okay and very suitable. And it looked like fencing. It was very similar to fencing. Now, from here, when you are striking certain strikes, you are effective. It's more or less, you look at my girlfriend, I slap your face with a white glove, and let's box, and I don't spear your heart with a blade. Now, when they moved from here to sport, and believe it or not, some boxers get $100 million for losing. Would you like to get $10,000 for losing? Yes, I'm sure you would, right? So they started doing it as a sport. and competition, and the media is there, and the Olympics are there, and all this. So if I fight like this without gloves, for 100% I'll injure my fists in your tooth. And 100 years ago, there was no Colgate, no Crest, and no antibiotics. So what will happen after a couple of weeks? Gangrene and albino without hands.
Right.
So they start putting gloves. And the goal is very specific, to score, to get points and all this. And I have gloves so I will not hurt you. I really want to hurt you, so I will not hurt myself. That's really the goal. So the system changed. It changed because of history, because of the different goals that he had. Now, our goal is, on one hand, to survive in reality. And sometimes it is involved with sacrifice, for example. Let's say I'm not by myself most of the day, by the way. Okay, we are not by ourselves most of the day. Yes, we are with other people. If we may be attacked, we may be with other people. So I may be with my family member, with my good friend, with my colleague. I may be even an officer of the law or military. So I will be not by myself. If my friend is being attacked, how do I assist my friend? My VIP, yes, in that sense, my family is my VIPs, yes. How do I assist them? How do I save them? I have to go into trouble. I am sacrificing part of my safety because of this. So this is completely different than boxing, for example. Now, if you think about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, by the way, boxers are the best in boxing. If you think, if I will need to fight a boxer, what should I do boxing with the boxer? He's much better. Right. When they are doing 2 hours of training, they are doing boxing. If I'm doing 2 hours of training, I'll do striking, kicking, defending knife attacks, going to the ground, releases from some grabs. Let's say during the month, I will do so many things. And preparing myself, and I do it in a sitting position. I'll do it near the wall. I'll do it while walking. I'll do it when an attacker is coming from behind. I'll deal with multiple aggressors. Now, the boxer doesn't have multiple aggressors. He's not training against this. The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is going to the ground. When you are on the ground, in the street, small hit to the head, you fainted from the ground.
Or you hit your head on a pavement.
Exactly. Yes. Or his friend is coming and kicks your head. And why? Because he's a football hooligan. He really knows what to do with the people on the ground. So, by the way, in the UK, in general, different than other places, people may see other people fighting on the ground, they just go and kick them. Just like this. Happens quite often. It's a mentality, it's a nature, it's the nature of the... In Brazil, if two people are fighting on the ground of the Copacabana beach, other people are circling around and betting who will win. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was developed in Brazil, not in the UK, in the streets and the pavement.
Yeah. And in terms of self-defense, there's a lot of discussion in Jersey at the moment about preventing violence against women.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get your take on Krav Maga as a self-defense system for someone who maybe they're fighting a bigger, stronger opponent. Is it quite effective in that regard in terms of the techniques that it employs?
Yes. So if you look at the history of Krav Maga, it was developed in the Israeli Defense Forces. And the idea was to give the soldiers tools for two things. One for battle, when the rifle cannot shoot, or it's not legal to shoot, not possible to shoot, or you choose not to shoot. That's one thing. Israel is a very small country. Where I grew up, it's about 10 miles from the beach, from the water, to the border. Wow. 10 miles. That's it. That's the waistline of Israel. So, by the way, when it's my own history, when the terrorists were shooting, when the Arabs were shooting before the state of Israel, to the house of my grandmother, who was couple of kilometers from them, my grandmother would take my father, hide behind the house, so the bullets will have two walls to pass.
Wow.
So it's a tiny country. Let's go back to the soldiers. So soldier may go home in the weekend and go to a restaurant with the family or to the movies with the girlfriend. If any type of violence happens, not talk about terrorism or war, it's criminal level or some sort of social violence,
Right.
yes, or somebody wants to rob him from his money. So he cannot behave like in a battlefield. Okay, he should do some basic self-defense. And the basic self-defense also correct for women. So the girl soldiers learned how to defend themselves also. So the idea is to give the best solutions for a specific problem, and then after that start training against variations of the problem, using variations of the solutions according to the principles, according to the components they already learned, and then apply the best and most effective solution. Okay? So for example, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that you are training, you cannot shove fingers to the eyes. For us, it's basic if you are under threat. Okay? You cannot kick knee to the groin. For us, it's basic. You cannot give an elbow to the head. Also in boxing, in Thai boxing or Muay Thai, you can. But in many other styles, you cannot give a strike of elbow to the head. For us, it's a basic, especially if a woman is at close range.
Right.
So she's not so strong on one hand, but she can surprise. Okay? So we are teaching the women the advantages and disadvantages, the different tools, what happens when she's being grabbed, how to release herself, how to counterattack. And this is in the best way possible. And of course, the better she's trained, the more chances she has. But except of this, as we said before, the main thing is to try to identify the problem at the early phase. So we are teaching how to identify problems. So people are becoming sensitive to the behavior of aggressors.
Right. And you mentioned specific problems. Again, in Jersey, we recently passed legislation that focused on prosecuting people where offence involved a bladed weapon.
Yes.
Krav Maga and knife defence, is that a big aspect of it?
Yes, it is. It is. Really from the beginning of the system.
And is that particularly difficult to teach, I imagine, as far as preparing for that scenario with a knife?
So again, we understand the way the aggressors are attacking. The type of the way of holding the weapon, the way of attacking, the way of stabbing. So people identify the danger. And then there are a set of solutions of basic defenses. Most of the time we try to do simultaneous counter-attacking. After we get some advantage, then what is the next phase? Do we run away, if it's possible? Or do we continue to counterattack and disarm the person, control the person sometimes? The idea of multiple counterattacks to destroy the ability of the aggressor to continue. So very important. And we understand also the nature of the problem. We train realistically.
Right.
And obviously, realistically means that slowly you are loading. So we start with the lighter attacks, and not so strong, and not so fast, and as soon as possible build up. This is one thing. And of course, we are teaching people how to use common objects for self-defense. I prefer to defend with a chair and kick the persons in the groin and break the knee with a second kick and then run away. Okay? I prefer to do this. Do I have the ability and the time to do it? Yes or no? If I not, so the idea is prevention, different types of escapes, use of common objects with the option. And if there is no time, it's like sort of reflexive solution, then everything is based on the natural response. If that's the natural response, that's the defense and counterattack. Okay? So that's what we are building. This is the way we are teaching people in that sense.
And we mentioned defending against a larger opponent. I suppose on a similar note, teaching it in schools, is that something you're quite keen to see happen?
Yes. So of course we have the private sector, where people are coming to the training places, to our gyms and train. And we are, by the way, KMG is active in 60 countries. We have a couple of thousands of instructors who are active around the world with their own gyms and clubs and all this. And we have, from the beginning of the system in Israel, meaning for civilians, we also started teaching teenagers and kids. Later in the world, it started later, obviously. But we do have kids groups. And they are learning through different games with good attitude, but they still learn the correct things, the correct techniques. And then if we think about going into the governmental system, okay? So we call it, maybe sometimes it's called gray education, maybe. So it's education after the regular daily extracurriculum. Yeah, extracurriculum. So we had in Israel, there were many years that it was done inside the curriculum.
Right.
So instead of having a physical education, playing football, running around, making circles of jogging around, they did Krav Maga. And by the way, the fitness level is being increased also with the things we do, obviously. And the education of coordination and balance and strength and stamina. Of course, it is being done with the techniques. Mm-hmm. As I said before, physical, technical, tactical, mental. Physical is there. So we are preparing the people as physically as possible to be fit. Yeah. And to be fit also for dealing with violence, obviously.
But especially at a school level, I suppose other traits, there's the clear benefit of being able to defend yourself. But yes. I imagine discipline, determination,
definitely,
those sort of things, especially if you're teaching a young child, great to have that first, and then they can maybe worry about the real world scenario.
Definitely. When you look at this mental section of the system, it is going in three directions. One is combat mindset, and that is courage, determination, persistence, enthusiasm. This is the combat mindset section. And then we are focused on concentration. What to focus about, what to ignore, yet what is not relevant, what is relevant. And then relaxation and diffusing of destructive emotions, which means, fear, anxiety, hate, envy, okay? To self-control. By the way, if people know Jordan Peterson, he has a great talk with a gentleman about martial art and parkour, and especially about training kids, about the role of the father to put challenges on the child, right. About rough play, about a bit of a wrestling type of game with the boys especially, but not only. So therefore, all the parents, I definitely recommend to listen to Jordan Peterson and understand that concept of right. Of building courage with the person, because you don't want the people, the young ones, to be chickens and rabbits. You want them to be, at least to have the ability to make a switch and to be a predator when there's a need, but predator in control.
Yes, he talks about the idea of having the ability to be dangerous, but exactly. voluntarily choosing to control it.
Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I promised we'd get to your background, which, like I say, a long history there with Krav Maga, but your involvement's fascinating as far as your relationship to the founder.
Yes.
And I do want to ask how that came about, and then ultimately you went on to grow the system around the world.
Yes. Okay, so when I started, I was 15 years old. And I met the founder, his name was Imrich, yes, Lichtenfeld, and he changed his name into Hebrew. But he was known as Imi to everybody. So, by the way, something about his history, he was a champion in wrestling and boxing and gymnastics on international level, yes. But since he was 19, after getting 3 championships, he focused only on wrestling. But then he was in the Slovakian national team, and he grew up in Bratislava. And then in 1936, when the fascists came into power, there were a lot of attacks on the Jewish quarters and the Jewish people. So he became the uncrowned leader of a group of about 100 people, most of them Jewish, but not only, that had some background in sport and weightlifting and boxing and wrestling and these things. By the way, his father was chief of detectives in that city. So he was the uncrowned leader, and he was of this section. And then he also started teaching them something about self-defense and fighting. Then he reached Israel, back then Palestine under British mandate, joined the resistance against you guys, yes, against the British. And we are closing the circle, yes. And then the IDF. When I started, Krav Maga was 10 years in civil life. Mm-hmm. And as I said, I was 15, he was 64. I met him in his 64th birthday.
Right.
I started training with him a few months after. And in the early 80s, I was his closest assistant. Wow. Now, I became I was at that time studying electrical engineering. So by profession, I'm Krav Maga instructor. By education, I'm electrical engineer.
Brilliant.
And so I chose eventually to do only Krav Maga. I served my regular military service in communication, but then in the reserves, I started working with special forces in the military, and then in the civil section, undercover anti-terror groups that I was teaching. And within me, the relations grew very deep. So although it was the age of my grandparents, we practically became best friends. Wow. His family wrote that I was like a son to him. And I was in the right place in time. Of course, I've got some capabilities, obviously. And my job was to make Krav Maga a system. He was genius, as I said, with making the best solution for a specific problem. Mm-hmm. He was teaching what he felt. And I created this integrated system out of it. Mm. And of course, with the time, so the modern curriculum of the system I started doing in the late 80s.
Yes.
And then...
and you also wrote a book as well,
yes,
which you both worked on.
Yes. Yeah. We wrote, practically we wrote 3 books together. Only one came out. Maybe in the future we'll have 2 more. And then the relations grew in a way that he put on me the responsibility on the system. Mm. So I made a modern curriculum, and I started, then after that, started to spread Krav Maga in the world.
How did you feel about that? Big responsibility? Or
yes, of course.
You were obviously so embedded that you knew where to take it?
Yes, so, I mean, in order to do something like this, you have to have the responsibility, because it's life and death. Mm. You know that you must know that you are doing the best job, because people depend on you.
Right.
It's obviously. So the people trust in you in a way their lives without even paying attention to it. Yes, they spend time and money to train, and the thinking is, yes, many people think, oh, it's about I want to be fit. I also want to learn self-defense. But what we are giving them is the responsibility is to give them the best to save lives, change life also, save other people's lives also. Yes, and whether they are civilians or police or military.
Yeah, and protect the people they're with, as you mentioned at the start.
Exactly, the third-party protection, what you call, or VIP protection, yes. And the first start of spreading Krav Maga in the world was in the US in the early 80s, and then towards the mid 80s also I visited several times and built towards the police departments there.
Yes.
Again, a police officer, it would be good if they don't shoot people, unless they really have to. But if they have no capabilities of defending themselves and controlling well the other side, the criminal side, so they will shoot them. Mm. So it's also about saving lives of others. Yes, not all the time the criminal deserves a shot in the head. And then in the mid-90s, I started spreading in the world.
Yes. And speaking of the global reach, it's found its way to Jersey, of course, as well.
Yes.
The local practitioners, you're actually holding a seminar tonight.
Correct.
What do you hope they take away from it?
So it's a seminar of 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's not a lot. And I cannot make them experts in 3 hours. I'm not good enough. Yes, maybe next time I'll have a blue pill or something. Yes. So today what we will do is we will focus on dealing with knife attacks and knife threats. What happens, for example, if somebody's trying to rob you, and how to comply, because sometimes giving the money or giving the object is much, much better.
Sure.
Yes. If I was your mother, I would tell you, give everything. I want you back safe home. Don't fight anyone. Definitely not somebody with a knife. But when there's no alternative, if the aggressor changes the mind from seeing you as an object of or as a resource for money, may see you as an object or to hurt or to enjoy from hurting you, then we need to defend ourselves. What happens if it takes you, hold you strongly, maybe takes you as a hostage because somebody identified as a problem? So this type of things. So robbery, hostage, strong, dangerous attacks. That's the idea. Yes. And of course, I'm really opening windows to the subjects. Yes.
Yeah.
And they should eventually, after the seminar, they will have a quite good idea about the different problems, at least some of the different problems, and the best solution to solve. But we also understand that they need not only the knowledge, they need the practice. And practice they can do with the time, with the instructors.
And we've got a few minutes left. A question I've been dying to ask you, a bit of a bonus question, really.
Yes.
Have you ever actually had to use Krav Maga to defend yourself in a real-life scenario? Is that
The answer is yes,
Wow.
but nobody tried to kill me, really.
Sure.
But what I can say is that I had students of mine saving their lives.
Brilliant.
Now I come from Israel, yes. So I had students of mine from the special forces or from the military
Yes.
that literally killed terrorists and things like this when they were attacked. So they just didn't go and shoot somebody, obviously, yes. But this was when I was working with them a few decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, time is passing, and I don't know even how, you know. So, and also a large number of civilian students. So first of all, it was my own students, and at a later stage, students of my students,
Yes.
all over the world. So because we are from Australia and New Zealand to Finland, and we are from US and Argentina to Japan, and so
Long may it continue.
yes. So that's the idea, to give people tools, again, for two things: for saving lives and for changing lives for the best. Why? Because they have more courage, because they have more self-awareness, because they can function better under stress.
And is that a very gratifying feeling to know that you played quite a central role in that, developing it and sharing it around the world?
Yes, I mean, this is a mission in life, in a way. And I do my best. And, you know, the rest is in the hand of Allah. Yes, that's what can I say? And we have the different products, in a way. We are teaching civilians the regular curriculum. We are teaching kids, it's first of all specific curriculum for kids and teenagers, and then they go into the curriculum of the adults.
Right.
We have regular training for women, which is focusing about problems for them. Okay, so sexual assault or certain type of grabs or grabbing the hair, you know, things like this, taking to the ground in specific manners. So this is and how to move better when you are limited because of high heels or tight skirt. And then we have a section which is mainly towards managers, so they will be able to deal with stress better. Not so much about the self-defense, but we take Krav Maga as a vehicle to understand stress and see the phenomenon of stress, what's doing to the body, and deal with stress, which is, you know, coming from their work and the load that they have on a regular or daily basis. So, and of course, military and police and all these things.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Good.
Thank you so much.